Welcome to the Lovecars On The Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff Needell, and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars On The Grid, your global motorsport podcast, where this week I've been tasked with, he's been out gallivanting, so I've been tasked to do a bit of research for once, because he does most of the research, and to be honest, he has most of it in his brain, but don't tell him that, because he's quite clever at those sort of things. We haven't got that much to cover, so I'm actually going to ask Tiff Needell a few questions about his motor racing career, because it's quite motorbike heavy. Not that there's anything wrong with that at all.
You're trying to dodge the task I left you. I told you you've got to watch all the television last weekend. So what were you doing instead of watching what I told you to watch?
I'll tell you what I was doing, actually. I was very proud to do a bit of marshalling on the weekend at Castle Combe, which is my local circuit. And it was wet, it was cold, it was miserable, but everybody had a smile on their face, and it was great fun. And seeing it from that side of the barrier was really quite interesting as well. Crikey, Castle Combe.
Was there a reason you were doing marshalling at all? But why should you suddenly volunteer to go marshalling on a wet day at Castle? Anything I could think of, maybe? Isn't there some system where you get points back if you do that, maybe?
Well, I did get 9 points on my license for going through two black and white flags, but it was good. You know, it's quite funny. I actually felt quite young there, because there were a husband and wife marshal pair that had been doing it for 50 years, 50. Another guy there, Dan, who was head of my post. I was on post 2, which was quite a dull one because it's on the straight. He'd been there for 47 years. And another guy, Roger, next to me, done it for 30 years, over 30 years.
Do they stay on the same post, or they move round? Is that their home post, or are they moved every weekend?
That's a good question. They actually do move around a lot as well. And I was hosted by a chap called Richard Beard, who looks after all the marshals. And these guys are all voluntary. There was over 140 marshals voluntary that do this every event. So when you don't
we can't
realise,
race without them. We can't race without them.
And
did you get an orange? Did you get an orange suit? Did you get an orange suit to wear for the weekend?
I got an orange tabard, which I wore with pride. I wanted the boiler jacket so much. I wanted this suit, but I didn't get the suit. just the tabard. But it was brilliant. And genuinely, I will go back next year. I'm not going to say I'm going to do it every weekend, but I will go back and do something next just to show a little bit of support, moral support. So that was good. But you were in Scotland and you were gallivanting, no motor racing at all for you. So.
Yeah, I went to a wedding, so that's why I left you with all the job. I read a few headlines. I mean, my sporting bad weekend for the Needells. The Southampton lost at Chelsea. Kyle Larson was knocked out of the Talladega. I saw that, so I don't care who wins that. Well, actually, it was quite a good result. And then the Raiders, the Needell football team, having won 3 on the trot, lost. So it was a bad weekend sporting-wise, which I'm hoping you'll cheer me up with some great news and talk about motorsport.
Well, we're both fans of homegrown talent, and Elfyn Evans will start off with World Rally Championship. So he stormed to victory in Finland. So I was really chuffed with that. So that's a really good, positive story. And he's narrowed the gap a little bit on Sébastien Ogier, who still has 190 points in the Driver Championship, and Elfyn now has 166. So he's narrowed that gap. He's kept his championship hopes alive, and he had a brilliant win. He was sensational weekend
I saw the Irish boy Craig, another sort of home-ish. I mean, across the pond in Ireland, he was having a great rally. Craig Breen, he lead for a while.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I didn't. He did have a very good race as well, but I was focusing mainly on Elfyn, who won by about 28 seconds in the end, which in rally, it doesn't really match in that. But yeah, I saw good news for Breen today. He's signed for Ford for the next 2 years, so he's back having a permanent drive. He's only been temporary with Hyundai or Toyota. Which one is he in? I always forget. Hyundai. And he's got the Ford deal. So Craig, I mean, he wears his heart on his sleeve, Craig Breen. He's in tears and he just loves rallying, and he's one of these kids that's, it's a bit like Alexander Albon in Formula One, that just sort of couldn't believe he was there, and just being there, just absolutely loves it. It's a great characters in rallying as always, and hopefully Elfyn can close. I think Ogier is sort of a bit cruising, isn't he? I didn't read the stories, but I think he's sort of picking up enough points to claim that 8th title and retire gracefully. But great stuff. But Elfyn, around the finish run, it's a mega rally. That did you catch it on telly? I mean, it's so hard to find on telly. I think it's really hard. No, I had to catch up on online. But in terms of Breen in day one, he was leading and he was tussling the whole way with Tanak. They're both, you're right, in Hyundai's there and the i20. The i20 ends, they are the little Hyundai cars. So they were both tussling well. with that. But I don't know. There's only 2 rounds left. The penultimate round is next in 2 weeks' time in Spain, España. So I think that Ogier's done enough there. I mean, it's
cruise it.
Yeah, 34 points in the lead there. So Tiff, the World Rally Championships, I thought it was okay, and it was beautiful in Finland. All the autumnal colours, and you see the forest. I thought it was okay, and it was great result for Elfyn. But before we go to Superbikes, I'm going to ask you a question, because this is you're a big deal in these parts. I want to know. I'm intrigued about your motor racing career, and it was a while ago, a lot of it, but you're still racing now. But Formula One, the pinnacle of motor racing, and you were a paid driver. You're not like one of these little guests.
Picture myself. I was like Albon and Craig Breed. I had Jeremiah's. I mean, even before I got to Grand Prix, I did that British Championship with my famous Durex Academy chevron, which has been on Twitter recently, a few photos. And the Race of Champions in 1979 was when they used to mix. It used to be Formula 5000 and Formula One to fill out the field, and because only the Formula One teams only had like one car. But for 79, it was the British Formula One series. So I was out with my Durex chevron. And I still remember this day between Westfield and Hawthorns at Brands, that Villeneuve went by me on the inside and just broadside, middle of apex, 2 wheels off the dirt coming out of it, plunged down into Dingle Dell. And I was just gobsmacked, because, I'm being a fan of motorsport. That's why I'm a bit different on a racing drive, because I did cling to the fence, watching heroes racing, Jim Clark and Sterling Moss. But to have Villeneuve blast by, in qualifying, that was, I still remember that moment so clearly.
Who else have you raced against?
Well, Formula One then, because that year there was Jody Scheckter was the Ferrari as well, and Alan Jones, Reutemann in the Williamses. So it was a wonderful time. I got Nelson Piquet, the Ligers were up there, the French boys, and
Lauda.
But I don't know. Nicky wasn't there still. I can't remember these names that you bring out of the hat. It's sad. I should be able to remember them. I was in a dream, and I was in the middle of a sort of, it was the FISA Foci, the Birdie's boys against the manufacturers, Ferrari and Renault. That's why the next Grand Prix in Spain they didn't turn up. And I was in these meetings, putting a vote as a driver, to not, we were going to boycott the race because the FIA wanted to cancel our licenses if we didn't do various things. So I was a pirate, one of the pirates, in on these meetings, and it was just, I was living in this strange world for 3 or 4 months.
Well, you're still living in a strange world now, but a slightly different world. And we'll come back to some of your exploits, but we are going to go to Moto GP, because this is supposed to be a global motorsport roundup for the previous week. Marc Marquez, sorry.
Yes, I saw he won.
Yeah, it was in COTA, which is in Austin, Circuit of the Americas, and he was again, he won last year, so he regained his title.
I love him. I think it's brilliant. He's come back from that terrible injury, and he won that German race. And now, as you say, won again. And but it was a lot of, in the press, the Moto GP boys were moaning a lot, which we always think it's the Grand Prix drivers that complain when a curb's too high or something. But a lot of moaning about bumpy, and the circuit was very bumpy. And Rossi, I read stories at the end of the day how he was almost exhausted. It was so physical because the bumps were too bad. So it's quite strange that the bike boys, you always think, will ride anywhere. If they go to the Isle of Man, at places as crazy as that. But they were complaining a lot about the bumps. And but good to see Marquez winning.
Well, he was a bit of an exhibition, really, wasn't it? And then how'd you pronounce this in Italian? Bagnaia, thank you.
I think, yeah.
So he's chasing his 3rd win after his 3rd pole position in a row. But he
was on pole, was he?
Yeah, he was.
The previous 2, yeah.
And he slipped back to 6th place. So yeah, it was. And what's this about, Tiff? I did read a little bit about it as well, trying to swat up on my MotoGP. It said all the riders chose the hard front compound tyre. Why just the hard front compound? Is it all about the front? Is it? Is that? I thought
it depends on the bikes.
Right.
Well, no, if you've got an understeer, but they still have understeer, they can, or oversteer, too much grip at the
front.
So,
on a bike is so huge and massive, and the front side typically is.
Yeah, but when it's leaning over, you're only sitting on a little bit of it.
That's true.
It looks huge in sort of circumference, but you're only on a little bit of it each time. But it's very much how the front and rear, this balance they all have. And every rider, they seem to choose different options. It's a very tricky part of your MotoGP setup, and which why sometimes riders will start well and then just disappear backwards if they lose that grip. But Moto2, I didn't see Sam Sykes in the results. Sykes wasn't up there. I think he had a bad weekend, and I think he fell off. Not so good for him in the qualifying, I read, but not good in Moto2. Although Jake Dixon, I read, had a good run, finished 10th or something. So the Brits are trying, but still no real stars. But the Moto3 was a massive crash I saw on Middle Phone. Did you see that?
No, I didn't even see
you
that.
missed it? Oh,
I didn't.
I've given you this job.
I tried to watch as much as I could. There's only so much to do. Well, Saturday I was marshalling, so I've got an excuse there. But
it wasn't on Saturday.
I was going to say, but no excuse for Sunday. Well, I did see that Jack Miller, who he was dominating practice, but he slipped down to 10th place. He didn't do very well.
Yeah. So no, the kids had a terrible time. There was big controversy because they were having these shunts. There was this horrendous accident. I mean, you've got to YouTube it if you haven't seen it. Because going down the straight, this kid called Oncu, the Turkish boy, was overtaking it. And he just, before he was fully passed, he just moved over on Alcoba. And he went down, flat out, 140 miles an hour down the straight. And then Pedro Acosta, the little kid, 16-year-old, he went over the top, Superman flying. Two others were a horrendous crash. They were sliding on their backsides for like 200 yards.
Well, after recent weeks,
because they banned Oncu. They're all very worried because they've had this death that we talked about, that sad death in Spain. That these kids, they're not old enough. They're starting to ride, so young. They've got no fear at all, and the bikes are so close. And Oncu's actually been banned for 2 races, and they're having to do something about it because the bikes, are easiest to ride, huge slipstream. And whilst we love it all because it's so entertaining, when it goes wrong at 140 miles an hour, and you've got 15-year-olds flying through the air. It's a terrifying thing. So
yeah,
I controversy Moto3.
A couple of people heard the podcast, and they were shocked that 15-year-olds were riding professionally like this, and it is a bit shocking, isn't it? I mean, you really probably think there should be an age limit of 16. I know that.
Well, I've said it for cars. I didn't like it when they allowed 16-year-olds to drive cars, and then 15-year-olds and 14-year-olds. Mainly there because it allows the rich dads, to get 14-year-olds racing. If you haven't got a rich dad and you're 14, you can't drive to a racetrack in your Caterham, however far it may be, and race. Whereas at 17, if everyone's level, you're all starting at 17-year-old, you'd race against each other. It's a shame that, it's just one country, I think, 20 years ago, Sweden allowed 16-year-olds to drive. So everybody says, well, we've got to be fair. Our drivers need the same chances the Swedish boys. We all went 16, and then some other countries started 15. And I forget I saw the Moto GP reading the stories, and one of the leading lights, the British guy, Neil Hodgson, I think it was, pointed out that when he started riding, you couldn't race till you were 16, as same as on the public roads. And it is this pressure now. You've got to be young. You've got to be, if you're 23 in motorsport, you're not even allowed to enter the Autosport, young driver of the year competition.
It's crazy,
and
isn't it?
They're pushing and pushing because they love the headlines that the youngest Max Verstappen, the youngest, and you just got to slow it down. Even if you say, well, you can't get a Grand Prix license until you've done 5 years of car racing. Everyone will say, well, Max Verstappen only did 1 year. Yes, I know Max is, but if Max had done 5 years somewhere else, you would have had fantastic wins in Formula 3 and Formula 3 and Formula 2 and Formula 2 and then become a Formula 1 star. But they hate it. A lot of, people quote down there, you tell me, I'm wrong, because, it's all right. Kimi Räikkönen, Kim's to jump straight into a Formula 1 car. And yes, if the talent is brilliant, you can do it, but it just promotes the dads taking their kids karting for £300,000 a year when they're about 12.
Yeah, it's too young. These are incredibly talented. They are children, 15 years old. It's frightening. It's the same age as my daughter. I couldn't imagine her riding at 160 miles an hour on a motorbike. It's just it's incredible. But the talent is there. But maybe nurture them through a different way. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. And there's no right.
I think the bikes. They're talking about the bikes need more power or more. I don't know. They're looking at that as well. But there's definitely a big focus on Moto3 and the kids.
Well, we got more bikes coming up. I'm going to ask you another question. I want to know about Le Mans, and I want to know about your most memorable year at Le Mans, and I want to know, one, how many you've done. I know that. I'm just picking you up a little bit here. Your most memorable year, and how fast have you been down the Mulsanne Straight?
Yeah, I answered two questions there. You know, the kids always say, well, it's for 230 miles an hour down a Mulsanne Straight. And some little kids say, what fast are you going to crash that, Dad? And it's 230 miles an hour down the Mulsanne Straight. So that was memorable when the tail of the brackets on the bodywork ripped off the back of my Aston Martin Nimrod, and it all flew off the back, and the wing was on the bodywork. So I suddenly lost my rear wing at 230 miles an hour.
I can't believe you didn't hold it. I would have held it. I would have controlled it.
Rear wheels were no longer on the ground.
No excuse.
But I just, from the moment I arrived at, but again, because I'd been this fan, you know, when I grew up, you know, and read all the stories, never went to Le Mans as a kid, and a family, never any money to leave England. Families on the South Coast, holidays, East Wittering. So I just dreamed of Le Mans. When I got there, just walked down the famous pits that you saw in the Le Mans film that they rebuilt so well, you know, just these bunkers, and I imagine, you know, Jim Clark and Sterling Moss and Mike Hawthorne, you know, and I loved the place. And of course, the Mulsanne Straight was very special, and, you know, whistling down there for so long, you know, jiggering. The lorry lanes, you know, moving them out the straight because the trucks go down the same road. And so you sit in these wheel tracks, dents in the tarmac, and you have to almost pull out of them. And when you go across the crest at 230 miles an hour, you sort of jump across to the other lane, you know. So even the straights are pretty exciting with a kink at the end. But the whole atmosphere, because you're there, you know, from Wednesday night and Thursday night qualifying, Friday's the day off. And
did they do the drivers' parade through the town when you were there as well?
No, we had none of that. You know, the pits were so lovely because we were all the teams were just in the sort of forest behind the garages. There was a bit of tarmac in one centre bit, a lot of cars, and all the awnings were like tied to trees, you know, and the drivers had tents in the campsites. There weren't many motorhomes, although eventually they hired really old, musty, tiny caravans that we all lined up in a field. And it had that character, you know, there were lots of wooden huts where you bought models and bought crepe Suzettes and stuff. And it was just, but that all changed in 1990, you know, when 89 it began to change. Just no, 90 was when the chicanes went in, wasn't it? In 1990, and the new pits came in 91, which did change the whole atmosphere of the place. And I think it's a shame. It's because, you know, the teams want bigger trucks and transporters and huge garages with shiny floors, and that's the way motor racing has developed. But, you know, that charm of the old Le Mans until they ripped the whole paddock out, because the spectators would sit above you. So you're sitting in your car, an open-top sports car the first time, the Ibec. So I was sitting there and qualified while they changed the car, and you'd chat to the fans that all had their feet dangling over from the balcony just above you. And it was a lovely, so I fell in love with the place. I like, you know, French
most
food,
memorable year,
the French people. I don't know what, 1985 when I led Le Mans very briefly, this little trick we did with the M. Aston Martin, we were up against all the professional teams, and I got up to third genuinely. But when we stopped at the first pit stop, we only half fueled, so I could go out and have 6 or 7 laps in the lead. But obviously, you know, finishing third, you know, getting on the podium in 1990 with tears down my eyes. I mean, that was just, you know, so amazing. In fact, we were the last people on the old podium, which is the balcony on the old pit. So third place, the 2 silk cut Jaguars beat us. But in fact, we were the only private team in the top 6 because we had the factory Porsche behind us and the factory Nissan behind them and the factory Toyota behind that. So,
and you were in the Lister Jag? Were you in the Lister Jag for that?
Yeah, that was in the moving on to the 90s. Yeah, the GT cars, but you know they were tough cars to drive. The GTs, there was more pleasure in a way in a Group C sports car. It was more of a racing car, whereas of course the GTs are more of a compromise. But yeah, it's magical times, really was. And still, you know, every time I think of Le Mans, it's just great wandering around. The intro was, I think, about the second year they took Patsy, my girlfriend, who's now my wife. They said, "Do you want to go and watch the cars down the Mulsanne Straight?" So they walked all the way through the woods where the golf course is and got to the barrier. You know, you could go everywhere at Le Mans in the old days. And you know, all of a sudden, going past it. Patsy turned around straight away, says, "Take me back to the pits." Because, you know, you could get so close. And that's part of where motorsport loses. You know, you see them, you know, we're all so far from the track, a lot of them, you know, with the gravel traps at Grand Prix circuits, and sort of spectators are miles from the actual cars. But, you know, those old days where you get so close to the track, and, you know, the old restaurant, you could sit out and have a Pernod and water right next to the barrier in the middle of the Mulsanne Straight at the cafe.
Incredible.
So
you can choose one of your most memorable experiences. Are you going to choose Formula One or Le Mans?
Oh, Le Mans, the last one, having won, you know, the parade lap to to take the podium, having got third place, going around. And yeah, I mean, as achievement-wise, being on the Grand Prix grid without any sponsorship, without any money, bringing any money at all, was a great, accolade as a driver, because, to get to that tiny peak of Mount Everest. But the emotion of that, the last lap to the checkered flag at Le Mans was just overwhelming.
Brilliant.
You're making a lump in the throat now.
I've got hairs on the back of my neck standing up as well. But I'm going to move to World Superbikes, because we have got a podcast to cover as well for some serious.
Yeah, well, we're following them. It's an exciting championship this year. So what happened this time? It's a battle between Ray and
Jonathan Ray
and
Raz Gatsaloglu.
Toprak.
I prefer to call him Toprak, yeah. But he crashed out. He crashed out following a mechanical problem. And actually, Jonathan Ray actually had 2 crashes as well, but he bounced back.
Yeah,
to
they're
win.
both.
Yeah, but
he's still behind her. How many this championship? I've checked how many rounds. There's only 1 round to go, isn't there? Or is it 2 rounds left in that? I'm not sure, but I know that the Toprak's got the lead now, and Jonathan's still trying to get his 9th one of the rows. That's great. The British Superbikes up at Donington. I'm not sure what happened there.
Well, let me just go back to the points. So Toprak is 478 points and Jonathan Ray's 454. So it's between those two. That's after 11 rounds. So yeah, it's going to be close, but you would like to think the young Turkish lad's going to take that one home. And then you're right, Donington.
No, you don't. No, we've got Jonathan Ray.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd like, of course, bring it home for Great Britain again for the 8th title for sure. But I would say going by
Toprak's, he's got the upper hand now. He's got him on the run.
Donington Park in the wet. So it was Jean Ria. Is that how you pronounce his name? I'm so apologetic.
Raya,
Raya. He won a very wet Donington Park.
Jonathan Ray. Maybe.
No, we're going British Superbike now, Donington Park.
Oh yeah, I'm going. Sorry, yes.
So we got Jonathan. They're
Ray.
Both REA.
Ray will do.
Yeah,
I think Ray.
Yeah, and they're both. So
where's our bike critic? Our bike critic usually corrects us. He didn't correct me last time. Where are you, our bike critic?
Are they related? They're both British and they both got the same unusual surname. So are they related? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah. So so it's a win for both the Rays or Rias. Please let us know how you pronounce it. In the British Superbikes and the World Superbikes. So and I haven't really got much to say. I did make some notes on it, but it was very wet.
Well, the title is going between the 2 teammates, and Mackenzie and O'Halloran. That seems to be the way the championships go.
Yeah.
So that's only got one. That's only got 1 to go, I think, at Brands. So it's tight titles.
Yeah.
There were other cars. Of course, there was DTM, which I read about. Did you watch DTM?
No, I didn't.
You'd have to probably go. I don't know how you can. You'd have to download it.
You didn't tell me to swat up on DTM. Hang on, before we go to DTM. So you've been in television for a long time. You 15 years on Top Gear, 15 years on Fifth Gear. You had a little brief spell with us, and we got more to come there. What's your most memorable motor sport related item you did on television? Because you've done some serious stuff.
Motorsport was driving the Williams. To drive a Williams Grand Prix car, aged about
the V10 versus
54.
The V10 was that V10 versus that was at Rockingham with Vicky Butler Henderson. She was in a V10 M5. You were in a V10.
I was about 53 years old. I'm in a Formula One car again with my neck falling off after 3 corners. I couldn't hold my neck up. Whistling through Rockingham at 170 miles an hour up against the wall, then braking it. And that was absolutely epic, But I drove the Jordan when it was brand new. I drove the Jordan. I drove a March as well, the 761. So I've driven a few Grand Prix cars.
Speaking of Jordans, there's a picture of you somewhere with Jordan, Katie Price, as she was called Jordan back in the day, with the Jordan car.
Jordan.
Well. Yeah. No, with the Jordan car. Katie. Yeah. With you,
we promoted. I forgot what we promoted. Yeah, little Katie Price. She was good fun. It's a shame that she's in a hell of a mess at the moment, isn't it? But car crashes and. I
got chatted up by her once. I was a lot younger and didn't have so many wrinkles back in the day. Look at the state of me now. This is what you do to me, Tiff. All this research. Look at all this research. Look at it all. Okay, let's go to DTM.
Didn't get well. That's building up to. There's only 1 round to go at Norris Ring, the famous round Hitler's Great Stadium of the little street circuit, because it's a real battle between Liam Lawson in the Ferrari, the Red Bull Ferrari, against Kelvin van der Linde in the Audi. They were banging into each other's doors in the second race. So it's got a bit feisty. Lawson still leads. He had a fourth and a second at the weekend, with Van der Linde had a first and a penalised 10th. I read this story because I was interested. Because, of course, Albon had his last race. He never really... It's funny how Liam was overruled Albon. I don't think Alexander wanted to do it particularly. He had a second and a sixth. He's not doing the last round because now he doesn't have to, because he can't win the championship. So that's got another young Red Bull. Nick Cassidy's going in the Ferrari. And of course, you've got Esme Hawking, the British girl, interest there. She's right in the sort of getting up nearly the top 10. She had a 13th and a 16th. So yeah, it's good stuff, DTM, but we don't really get to see. It's hard to find. That's why
it's hard to find a lot of this, which is, you're right. Which is why we do this motorsport roundup. Well, because we love motorsport as well. But it is hard to find a lot of this. I don't know where.
And NASCAR. Unfortunately, I read it was all rain delayed, and then the number 5 got taken out. But Bubba won the thing, which is a great story because Bubba, the black driver, who's battling against racism, and came through. They all knew that it was going to rain. They all knew there was only about 3 laps to go to the end of stage 2. And so he wasn't, although he won it because it was red flagged when he happened to be leading, but nevertheless, all the other guys knew that it was most likely going to rain again and might be red flagged. So a fantastic feel-good story that Bubba Wallace won the NASCAR round.
There's no,
of course, next weekend there's a good Roval, so go street course around the Oval race within the Oval at Charlotte Oval called the Charlotte Roval, which is when the 12 get cut down to 8 in this cutting down before the grand finale. So
I was going to say with Bubba, there's no pictures on the scorecard. If I won a race under a safety car, I would not care less, which kind of is quite a link to where I'm heading tonight. Actually, I'm driving to Snetterton.
Yeah,
because
big event of the weekend, the biggest race going in the global motorsport arena. The last chance for Paul Woodman to get on the podium in Caterham Green Group.
I know. I have not.
Have you tested there yet? Have you tested there?
I haven't even looked. I don't even know if it goes left or right out of the pits. I don't know. I do not know a single thing about the circuit.
Get onto YouTube.
I haven't had time. You've been getting me. Look what you've been getting me to do. All this research. It's just. But I'm going to get on YouTube before I leave, and I've got a 4-hour drive to get there, but not in the Caterham this time. Caterham are very kindly looking after that. But so I look forward to seeing you late Friday night. You're off gallivanting with some
going out to test the new Corvette for which we'll be on Lovecars very shortly. So I'm looking forward to getting behind the wheel of the new mid-engine Chevrolet Corvette, which is the first one in its history. And there's a support race on this weekend. Apart from Caterham, we've got some Formula 1 cars in Turkey, haven't we?
Boring.
And BTCC, whatever they are.
It's all about Caterham. It's all about Caterham this weekend. There's nothing else but Caterham. There's a live link. 2 races.
BTCC.
2 races on Snetterton 300. So, please,
and no bikes.
Let me
no
get
bikes this weekend.
Forget the bikes. Let me get a podium, please. If there is. Do you know the most fitting thing would be after this season? It hasn't been the longest, but we've had sprint race and 6 other races. So, and now we've got 2 to come. The last race of the season, I can just see it now. It's going to be like a Hollywood blockbuster. The last race of the season, just all the 10 cars in front of me just crash and don't hurt each other, and then I just sneak
Paul Woodman comes through. Well, I look forward to reporting from the fence. We'll have that report as well coming up on Lovecars sometime in the next 2 weeks or so.
Yeah, we will. Look forward to it. Thanks for joining us. And Tiff, thanks for sharing your stories, because believe it or not, they are interesting and it's great to hear. No, you're an absolute legend, and it's a big month for you this month. And if you want to start sending birthday wishes, birthday cards, donations. It's a huge month for Tiff, and
I'll see you after qualifying.
Don't go
looking for a slipstream. Don't wave at anyone. Get your head down. Get a clear lap.
Well, I got it. I'm on it. There's 2 very long straights at Stetson. You need a tow.
No, forget it. You'll confuse yourself. You'll get enough lava. Follow me.
None of that. No hand waving. I've got a surprise for you in terms of the hand waving. I've got a surprise. We'll reveal all in the Caterham video to follow in a week or so. But thanks for joining as always. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.